Welcome back, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Sean Linton. Sean is the president and co-founder of Fully Loaded LLC, an Akron-based company that manufactures tobacco-free dip and pouch product lines. The idea and concept of Fully Loaded was initially just a fun hobby for Sean and his longtime friends, seeking a tobacco-free dipping alternative that replicated the attributes that they enjoyed. After building up the Fully Loaded brand and achieving multi-million dollar sales for the first time in 2018, Sean finally decided to take the full entrepreneurial leap of faith. In January of 2019, he started to work on the business in full capacity. Since this time, Sean's key objectives have been growing sales, both wholesale, retail, and direct to consumers online, building out their distribution networks, increasing operational efficiencies, R&D for new products, and the continued development of all strategic supplier relationships. Previously, and during the initial hobby phase of Fully Loaded, Sean had a 10-year career at InfoCision, an Akron-based marketing firm, where he was the director of their business services division. Everyone, let's please welcome Sean Linton.
Good morning, everybody. It's an honor. I'm flattered to actually speak to such a group as yourselves. If anything, I feel like I could certainly learn a lot more from all of you. We're still kind of in our infant phase as a company, but we're learning as we progress, and hopefully as I kind of walk you through our story, where we've been, where we plan to go, you can learn something. But yeah, ultimately, out of the gate, I mean, for those of you who don't know our product whatsoever, I mean, just like your typical tobacco, whether or not it's a Copenhagen Skull, we package our product in a very similar can. We offer our product in both pouches and long cut. As you see here, this is a can of pouches, a very similar texture look to regular tobacco, which was our goal, but ultimately to create a healthier alternative with no tobacco whatsoever. Ultimately, with our story, it's kind of funny. I'm a diehard Browns fan with a few of my lifelong friends. I mean, every Sunday back in 2015, 2016, we would get together despite our 3-13 and 1-16 type records. But ultimately, we were sitting there one day as the Browns were probably losing by 30 points or so, and we're reviewing some of the things in life. I mean, as we get older, I mean, we had wives, our families now, but the health ramifications with dipping tobacco came up. And ultimately, we started to discuss, like, what if we did something crazy, like created a new product that ultimately did not contain tobacco whatsoever? Could that be something that works? So we were kind of spitballing and throwing around the ideas of what sort of mediums and ingredients we thought that could ultimately maybe work as an alternative. So we kind of gave ourselves some grocery lists, if you want to call it that, and decided to get together like a weekend or 2 weekends later. And certainly out of the gate, some of our recipes and batches that we made were not very good at all. But we kept plowing away at it. And it was a very, very slow start for us. I mean, we probably spent 18 months. It was more, as mentioned, it was just a hobby. Another reason for us guys to get together on the weekend to work out our formula and our recipe. But as we progressed, we really made some strides. And I want to say it was probably a year in, we got to the point of like, this is good. And we found ourselves not dipping our typical Skull or Grizzly anymore. We're actually using our own product that we called Fully Loaded. The Fully Loaded brand name came from really just wanting to be able to replicate all the attributes that we love. So the texture, the pack, the flavor, the buzz effect, which comes from nicotine. We wanted our product to truly be fully loaded as an alternative to tobacco. So we kept moving along, and we got to a point where giving it out to friends, family, local small businesses here in the Akron, Portage Lakes, Green area. And we start off just giving it out, but then I think we had a survey monkey to start, and we would ask the questions with regard to those attributes that we were looking to replicate. And the feedback was great. We actually had people starting to say, like, I want your product. I'll pay you for your product. So this got us to a point kind of more or less in the year 2017 where it's like, let's take this seriously. Let's go ahead and put up a website. So we did, and it's powered by Shopify. And out of the gate, it was more or less just kind of sharing, using social networking platforms, just our brand, our story. And we started to see our first bit of a real revenue stream through our online platform. This escalated quickly. I mean, I remember just being like little kids and like, oh my gosh, people out there in the real world like are buying our product and they're sharing our feedback. They're taking pictures with it and telling the story on how they're they're living a tobacco-free life right now. So it quickly grew. I mean, by December of 2017, I wanted to say we did around $40,000 in sales. And I think that was the first time I was like, this could be real. So out of the gate, it was just like any small business. I mean, it's getting your processes aligned, understanding demand and the manufacturing and how we need to keep up with it, starting to negotiate pricing with some of our suppliers that we're using for various ingredients. Like the medium that we ended up using is a proprietary blend of spearmint leaf and kudzu root. And then we infuse that with our flavor blends. But out of the gate, I mean, we're buying such small quantities, costs were astronomical. So now that we actually started to really produce, that was one of the key things. I mean, starting off small, it was understanding that the orders coming in, how to set up. I mean, even just getting negotiations. I mean, we use ShipStation as our means to actually fulfill our products and orders. So getting those rates down, fulfilling packages efficiently, making sure that we understood what SKUs are selling, how to make sure that supply is there to meet the demand. So it was a very educational process out of the gate. And as we headed into 2018, obviously our goal was just to really push the envelope. So one of the first things that we did that helped really propel our business to the next level was utilizing digital marketing, SEO, keyword searching, optimizing there, all social platforms. We started to run Facebook ads, Instagram ads. And at that point, we saw extreme growth, probably the most growth we've seen in our company history, where we went from, like I mentioned, being excited in 2017, just selling anything at all, to it was really by March, I think, of 2018, we achieved over $100,000 in online sales. By June, we achieved over $250,000 in sales. And that's when it was like, okay, we really got to get our stuff together. We were still operating out of my basement at this time, and really didn't have any employees. I think we had our first 2 employees during that period of time. So we were all working our full-time jobs, coming home after our work, working another 6-7 hours until midnight. I mean, every night was burning the midnight oil, which obviously isn't sustainable. So our goal at that point in time was, obviously we got to bring some structure to our business that we have now. And get employees. We definitely outgrew my basement at that time. So that's what brought us to downtown Akron here. We're right off of Cauga Street. Many of you might know Luigi's famous pizza joint here in Akron, Ohio. So we're right down the road from there. So we moved into a nice 10,000 square foot facility, and for the first time started to use some of our capital. I mean, it was kind of like dumb luck. This little hobby that we had quickly turned into a revenue generating business, but making those first investments and learning to use money intelligently. And one of our sponsors here today, Apple Growth Partners, they helped us out a lot out of the gate. I mean, we hadn't even paid ourselves until this point in 2018. And we brought them on board. They educated us. It's not a bad thing to actually pay yourselves. I mean, we were just kind of holding on to this money. I mean, we were lucky enough to create a business that after launching on our e-commerce platform, created a few $100,000 in profit. So now it was more about driving efficiencies and planning for the future. So Apple growth helped us out tremendously, understanding tax implications, R&D credits, things along those lines. So some of those things that helped us grow, one of our first investments was a labeler. I mean, to drive efficiencies. I mean, we were hand labeling, we were hand packing, we were doing everything in a very, very, very manual way. So 2018 was that year of learning and getting the space that we needed. We could buy in bulk at that point. We invested in racking. We bought our first forklift. Got some new mixers, multiple new mixers. We partnered with a local company with fulfillment to minimize errors. I mean, when we're fulfilling packages, our SKUs quickly grew. Just to educate you a little more, I showed you like this is my favorite. It's our peach pouches. We have 9 total flavors at this point, but this is an example of our long cut. But having all these SKUs, I mean, we quickly realized when you're fulfilling hundreds of packages a day, I mean, it's a tedious job, and a lot of our SKUs look the same. But something as simple as just having barcode scanning in place as the orders come through, the scanner device that we invested in, ultimately, as you're checking in the order and checking out the order and fulfilling the package, it'll guarantee that it is the correct SKU for what the product or for what the customer ordered. But yeah, I mean, fast forwarding to, I mean, again, we're still in our infant phase here as a small business, but it was 2019 at this point. We just eclipsed our first multi-million-dollar sales year. And at this point in time, it wasn't a hobby, obviously. I mean, with me and my partners, we're still working our full-time jobs. And it was me personally, I was like, I got to go all in on this. I mean, we're on to something big here. So 2019 was the first year that I stepped in and started working on the business full-time. My goal out of the gate was to just bring some organization to our operation, obviously grow sales, network across all facets of the business. I mean, one thing that I've learned so much is how important suppliers are, to have clear communication with everyone, just not for them to understand our business, but for us to understand their business, expectations, timelines. We were growing at a rapid pace, putting in, it seemed like every month we were putting in bigger and bigger orders with whether my kudzu root, spearmint leaf, our flavors, our nicotine supplier. So having clear lines of communication there, even as something as simple as like the plastic cans that we use and package our product in. I mean, we had a couple cases where they weren't able to fill our order, and we were pretty much on a certain cadence at that point. But having redundancies in place. At this point, I mean, we're heading in a direction now where we want to own as much as possible. Something as simple there with injection molding. I mean, having your own mold is critical. I mean, if they happen to have a machine go down or they have back orders themselves, being able to just say, okay, we're coming and picking up the mold and we'll take it somewhere else if you can't fulfill our job. So that was key. Regarding payroll, HR, obviously this sprung upon us so quickly, but partnering with another sponsor here today, GMS, that was huge for us, just to bring some more additional education to how to conduct things, how to discipline employees, how to incentivize, how to promote, how to hire. That was critical for us. We've been extremely lucky. I think we have done a great job in terms of creating a culture that folks really want to come to work. I mean, we really don't have any issues whatsoever with retention. I mean, we're a small business, like I mentioned. We're usually right around 12 employees on staff, but we rarely have to actually worry about retention or hiring. When COVID hit, that was our first experience where we had to actually lay our folks off, and I was very concerned with it. Obviously, it sprung upon us all. Who could have saw that coming? But we ended up just doing a 2-week furlough. But we did have a couple employees that were obviously concerned, and they sought out other employment. And we did lose a couple people during that period, but we were able to recover pretty quickly. But yes, like my goals, like as soon as I came on board, were really growing the business, obviously growing sales, with the online platform being our backbone. It's fantastic. But what we really realized quickly is within the dipping community, in that demographic, folks don't want to buy in bulk online and wait 2 to 3 days for shipping. The typical dipper, they like to go to their local retailer, get their cup of coffee in the morning, and pick up their can of dip. So my focus was really growing our brand within that network of folks, the category managers for stores and gas station chains like Circle K, your Sheetz, your Speedway, Maverick stores out west. But one of the keys there that we learned quickly was the distribution aspect of it. Very rarely will you see a circumstance where a big chain like that is ultimately going to buy directly from you. I mean, we got lucky out of the gate just with creating a quality product that folks liked. I mean, we had a lot of mom and pop shops seeking out, inquiring with us on how they can go about carrying fully loaded in their stores. But those are few and far between. I mean, we got a few hundred stores that way. But ultimately, to have a big brand presence in the retail world, you have to have distribution. So that was one of my key objectives right out of the gate. So I aligned distribution with some of the bigger distributors in the country, like McLean, Core-Mark, E.B. Brown, Abraham and Sons, even some more smaller ones, regional, like Hardex down in Kentucky. And this positioned us to actually have those serious conversations with some of the bigger retail chains across the country. So that was certainly the big task at hand. And it also put us in a scenario where I learned that we need to be prepared for big purchase orders. And this was probably our first big mistake as a small business, was investing in something that wasn't necessarily there yet. You have to be prepared for it. You got to be flexible. You got to be able to flex into it, making sure that you have the labor and the operation and the supplier relationships to meet those bigger purchase orders that might come through. But don't overextend yourself was one of the first things I learned. It was probably about a $250,000 mistake for us in 2019, which is obviously tough to recover from as a small business. We had gotten our first line of credit. I remember like thinking of all the things that we needed, getting cans, getting ingredients, doubling our labor staff. And all of this was because we had such a successful initial launch in 2018 from our e-commerce platform. We attended our first few trade shows. We thought we had folks lined up at the door and picking up our product. So we went heavy. We bet on ourselves that we were going to land these deals, and ultimately they didn't necessarily come to fruition. So that was our, like, in terms of overextending ourselves and literally just throwing money out the door, that was our first mistake. We probably had 100,000 cans worth of finished goods that ultimately weren't able to move because we thought we were going to have these deals lined up. So be prepared for the growth, but just don't overextend yourselves was definitely the first thing that I learned there. So as we came into 2020, we kind of recovered from that initial mistake. I felt like we were positioned extremely well to have a successful year. And then obviously COVID hit. It hasn't been too rough of a year for us. Because I mean, we were positioned well with our staff. We had the downfall was we probably had a good 3 to 4 serious big retail chains lined up out of the gate this year from trade shows in January and February. When COVID initially hit, kind of that put a pause on everything. So our sales didn't necessarily suffer, but it was that opportunity cost there. But one of the key things was just staying connected. Obviously, with today's technology, you have your Zooms, you have your Skypes, staying connected. We had good relationships with those folks. So kind of just kept plowing through. Our online sales were up around 6%. Like I said, we only had a 2-week furlough with our employees. Once we understood that we were considered an essential business or could be considered an essential business, we kept plowing away. So throughout the summer months, I mean, our online sales were still strong. I stay connected with Travel Centers of America, Maverick, Sunoco stores, and all of these are actually coming to fruition right now. So though COVID has been and still is a huge concern, we're learning to live with it, making sure that we're maintaining our social distancing. Of course, all safety protocols are intact with our operational staff. I mean, gloves, masks, everything along those lines. But we've really recovered well. With our employees, like I said, our retention has been extremely strong. We've created a positive culture. I mean, one of the things, I mean, as an entrepreneur and kind of launching a small business, I mean, we've always wanted to promote within. As we've grown, putting people in position to manage others or be the next guy to train new staff that comes in. Though it's an hourly, most of our employees are hourly, providing them a track to ultimately move up quickly. That's one thing that I think has worked out very well for us. Maybe, let's say we're hiring at $12 an hour, but educating them on these are the things that you need to do to ultimately earn that extra dollar or two, and creating a path for them to get to 15, 16 an hour. It's really worked out well for us, not only because they become invested, but it's just a great overall culture. It creates a competitive atmosphere. We're constantly doing things like cookouts. I think it was last Thursday or the Thursday before. We had a nice 75-degree day out of nowhere. I mean, taking the grill outside and grilling out cheeseburgers for having a very productive and efficient week. We had just fulfilled a huge purchase order for Maverick. So incentivizing employees, creating a path for success, educating them on what they can do better. And on the same token, when employees aren't doing or aren't hitting the expectations that were laid out, making sure the discipline is there. Whether or not, I mean, everyone has their employee handbooks. All employees should walk through them during initial hire. But when expectations aren't met, making sure we follow through there as well, I think is important. Last thing you want to have is a situation where a write-up happened in one case, but not in another. And then employees become disengaged, so on and so forth. So some of the things that I think I wanted to touch on, I mean, again, as I mentioned, being in kind of more our infant stages as a company, things that I've learned, cash is important. I mean, it's a long saying, cash is king, but respect it. We obviously got lucky out of the gate in some cases. Someone once told me the harder you work, the luckier you get. But make sure that you manage your money intelligently. We're still, in a sense, recovering from some of the mistakes we made in 2019 when we really flexed and invested heavy in ingredients and supplies before the sales came. But we recovered now, and I think we're operating more lean like we did that made us successful back in 2017, 2018, when we were really starting to create cash flow and get our company off of the ground. As I mentioned, partners, whether or not it's like an accountant like Apple Growth or folks at payroll, HR like GMS that help us, but all of our suppliers, our local company that helps us run our fulfillment department. Anything and everything that plugs into your business, making sure communication lines are open has been extremely important for us. Having redundancy plans has been critical. Keeping staff engaged and apprised to where the business is going. That's one thing I've learned a lot this past year as we land new retail deals, as we prepare for new retail deals coming and bigger purchase orders. Things here locally. I mean, I even incentivize some of my staff members that aren't on our sales side to go ahead. If you frequent a local store, talk about Fully Loaded. Try to get us in. I mean, I'll gladly give everyone incentives to extend our brand. For myself, it's just still involving myself in all aspects of the business. Working on the business is obviously the key in growing it. But one thing that I've also learned is still getting in the trenches with the employees can help quite a bit. Whether or not it's in fulfillment, whether or not it's in our pouching department, whether or not it's having a conversation with the individuals in charge of our mixing, who are running our labeling equipment, anything and everything to do with the business. There's so many nuggets and opportunities to improve, whether or not it's increasing efficiencies, saving on cost, having the conversation about who we're utilizing, where the price points have come from with some of our suppliers. But there's several nuggets and opportunities to improve profitability and efficiency. And of course, like no matter how crazy the idea, as an entrepreneur, was something that I've learned over the last 3-4 years is you got to give it a go. If you believe in it, bet on yourself. I mean, we have this Fully Loaded brand that has really gotten us off the ground, but even more recently, we've started to diversify our product lines. We just launched a new product, Drive. So it is more or less a energy supplement, nootropic energy blend. Each pouch is equivalent to about a half a cup of coffee. So this has been an exciting new brand for us as well that we just launched. They're more dry. When you put it in your lip, you'll get the flavor kick. But ultimately, it's allowed us to extend our brand even more. I mean, that Drive product that we had on Amazon, I mean, we're already this year going to do a couple $100,000 in sales. It's allowed us to increase some of our marketing campaigns because there are several restrictions with a product like our Fully Loaded brand that does have nicotine. But also it's these two revenue streams that we've created allowed us to look into diversify business even more with our more robust fulfillment platform that we have. We're starting to bring on brands that have allowed us to contract under a separate LLC, but within our warehouse and our fulfillment center now, we've gotten 3 brands contracted where we're basically warehousing their brands. And ultimately fulfilling their orders through our warehouse. And really just don't be complacent, stay the entrepreneur, and look to learn something new every day. Like I said, it's an honor. I'm flattered to speak here to you guys today. I can definitely learn a lot more from this audience, but I'm glad I was able to share our story, kind of probably take some of you guys back to your early days when you're really just trying to figure everything out, because that's really what we're doing. We've created a national brand at this point. We've gotten into a few thousand. We're about 3,500 stores at this point. We're hoping to bring some more here locally in Northeast Ohio. It's been a little difficult to get in our own backyard, believe it or not. I mean, we're in several hundred stores up in Michigan and out west, up in Minnesota, throughout some of those states. But we're looking to really showcase the Fully Loaded brand here in Northeast Ohio soon. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today, and any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, thank you, Sean. That is the quintessential entrepreneurial story, from seeing a need in the marketplace and creating a product. So congratulations. And we do have a couple questions in our last few minutes here. Jan would like to know, how did you fund the initial months of the business out of your full-time job paycheck? Any outside funding?
Zero outside funding. That's one thing that we pride ourselves on. Not to say that that's not a way to go, because we have that conversation all the time. Obviously, most people are going to want equity. But out of the gate, obviously, we were nothing. But it was literally our own money. We were lucky enough that it only took a few $1,000s from each of us. Out of the gate, I had 2 other partners. But it was very small. Like I said, we were using my KitchenAid mixer in my kitchen the first couple times that we were manufacturing our product. So once we got to a point we believed in it and started to sell it, it was literally just taking the money and reinvesting it in the business and growing from there.
And for someone who invented a product, I'm living through this. This was 10 years ago for me, but I remember all of this. So and we have one last question. Are you FDA regulated, and is there a shelf life on your product?
Yes, there is a shelf life on our product. It is 9 months, which we learned quickly. Out of the gate, we were naive. So we have Best Buy dates. I don't know if you can see that printed on each can. It's automated with our labeling equipment, so real time, and we use Julian date coding for the bottom. to batch out our products. It's 9 months. Our product right now is in a very gray area with the FDA. It's something that we're staying very well connected with NATO. Obviously, tobacco is its own world, but as many of you might know, going into gas stations, there's new nicotine. Vaping is really what caused a lot of the regulations that are going to be on the horizon for us. But we don't use any component of a tobacco product. Even the nicotine we use is synthesized. It does not come from tobacco leaf. So no component of our product comes from tobacco. Therefore, right now, even with the new PMTA process, we're outside the purview. We're in a very gray area, but we expect that even the synthetic nicotine will be regulated at some point, and we'll have those regulations to deal with the FDA.
Awesome. Well, Sean, thank you so much. On behalf of everyone in the audience, we're giving you a big round of applause, and we appreciate your being with us today.